If Beth's there, she'll look me better, but if Beth's
Did you
not
say
there,
our
she won't.
people?
She'll look me better at all.
I think some people are reluctant to talk to their neighbor. They don't like David's dogs digging up their flowers, but they're going to say anything with David? No. And are they really digging up his flowers? Who knows? But that's something that people, you know, that's an example of something that may happen or has happened, or you know. So that's the thing. And so,
Or if you live next to a trashy neighbor.
Well, so you're saying that the town should step in?
I think that's how this came about. Is what I'm saying. Is how this came about. And so, as a
As documented on film number.
get it addressed without having to have the uncomfortableness of just talking with their neighbor who may or may not be agreeable, you know,
Yeah.
who may just get their back up and run you off. Well, I'm saying how I think that came about. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I got that on page
I appreciate
35. The barking, or was it 36?
36.
The barking, which is
Okay, any other discussion on the dog ordinance?
So we're dealing with 4 and 5 on the dog ordinance again. You know, we were on animals, but now we're on dogs.
yeah, specifically because the cats and dogs didn't apply to the
Right,
dogs.
okay, so now we're on
Number
pets.
1 is at large
Oh, number 1, okay.
on 35.
And then re-examine owner, which I like David's suggestion, that we put more responsibility on the owner
But who's
to be
gonna
responsible.
and who's going to hold that owner accountable?
Now we've got prosecuting attorneys and judges.
Well, we're hoping as neighbors.
I know, I am too. But that's what happens is that,
Well, that's what we're trying to,
yeah.
What prompted this, or were these blanket,
well, she just said it was prompted because they felt like people were reluctant to address their own issues.
so
with their
Beth felt that way? Because I'm not reluctant to talk to my
neighbors. No, she
neighbors.
just said that's how they came about.
I wasn't on the board
She
when
was.
this happened. I
She
mean,
wasn't saying.
That's how I think that ordinance came about, because they had neighbors who dogs ran and pooped in their garden. They didn't like it, and they wanted to stay friendly with their neighbors, and so they just
Relied on the town
So
to
here's a
take
way
care of
to-
it.
I wonder if these ordinances didn't come about because Lucille Lusk gave them to the board, and this is a
No,
blanket.
she didn't give us anything.
We went through all the ordinances.
So you guys wrote these?
No,
You know
we
this
did
legal
not, but
verbiage?
We went through and itemized them to what we felt at the time would accommodate the needs of the town.
Right, so these were something that was presented to you, and then you chose the ones that you felt would benefit the town.
Yes.
Yeah, we asked that they asked that they be presented. So on page 35, you're saying at large.
We've already discussed at large, so I'm not going to talk anymore about at large, I guess, because
Okay,
I've already
so
talked
then are we
about
down
that.
here on stray?
And
so if you
secured
don't have an identification
and-
tag, it's at large or lost?
The dog is large or lost without identifications. Yes, section 2. I have issue with section 2.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to, do you think we should require rabies? I mean, we haven't talked about that. I certainly think that's a health hazard.
That would be to the owner of the dog, I would think.
But everything can be the owner of the dog.
Right.
It's a public health issue.
Right.
If somebody gets bitten by a dog with rabies, and we allow dogs with rabies to run around town. It's a public health issue.
Well, we've already got the stray dog issue, right? We've discussed that stray dogs are an
Right.
issue.
But that doesn't mean that people who are dogs that aren't stray are vaccinated. I mean, somebody just adopted
Beth,
those dogs that wandered in
Beth,
the house. And they
I-
didn't have a rabies
I'm
shot.
telling you this. I haven't had any vaccinations. My children I didn't vaccinate. So that's I believe, my personal right, because,
Not if your dog bites my dog, gives
Right.
my dog rabies.
and if my dog bites your dog, but my dog, hasn't bitten your dog and doesn't have rabies, that doesn't say your dog won't bite my dog, won't be. Heffley's dog didn't bite my dog, but I'm just saying, in the village of Jameson, and it doesn't matter one way or another, because if I sew myself up rather than have a tetanus shot, I'm not giving my dog a rabies vaccination. So that's okay. I'll just be in violation. Y'all know it now. It's on record. So whatever.
That doesn't discourage
That's my-
me from objecting to. I mean, I
You can
think
object
that-
all you want, and you can actually.
So I understand where you are, is that you're not going to vaccinate, and that's fine.
I haven't vaccinated her
And
in
I'm
12
gonna
years.
advocate that we require her to be vaccinated.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then I'm going to go before the judge over that issue. But that's all right, because I'm willing to go as high as it takes.
So we're not changing that one. That's why I just want to make sure I was understanding. Thank you.
So we're not changing that one.
Well, I didn't, I mean.
My comment would be that it's the responsibility of the
I'll put
owner.
that in the comments. That's good. You're right. You're
It's
right.
my dog is my responsibility. If my horse gets out, that's my responsibility. I'm liable. If my dog does something, I'm liable because that's my responsibility. But I'm a responsible person. Now we're saying that if someone isn't responsible about their dog, but we've already got the stray dog thing. Most of the dogs in town belong to someone and they're part of their family. As your dog is part of your family, goes with you, does whatever, and you take care of it in the manner that you choose to take care of your dog and whatever. I guess I go along a different route than that, and it's because of my own beliefs. My dog gets natural remedies all the time, as do all my animals. And we've been through strangles, we've been through other things, so it's not like I'm not a responsible pet owner or a responsible person, but I'm just saying...
But not everyone's like you, Marianne.
Exactly, but I don't feel that I should be mandated to do something that goes against my core belief if I haven't damaged anyone else. That's my comment.
Okay,
I mean,
that's noted.
write it down. That's it.
Yes.
Okay, anything else on the dog ordinance?
Well, only that. Okay, so, and I don't know where it is. I've closed my book now, but where you can actually come onto my private property, come to my back door and demand, and really, it's like if you guys haven't been over to my house for some social thing or to be friendly in 20 years, do not come to my property and demand anything. It's my private property. And until I don't have any property rights, which is why I'm here tonight, because we're losing our own property rights, then, which is part of a bigger agenda that maybe you weren't aware of and have bought into, but that's what I'm here for. I'm here to protect my private property rights. Now, the day I don't have them, that's fine.
I have to say something along the lines, and this is, I know we're doing specifics. This is more general, and Marianne's brought it up, so I feel like, even though I'm on this side of the table.
Well, no, it's a discussion. It
Well,
should be
no, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a discussion.
Any
That's
of
right.
these ordinances that deal with private property, I think should be eliminated.
Amen to that,
The
and I
town
second
does
that.
not have business to deal with personal property.
So if there's a house that's dilapidated and has animals living in it and children playing in it, that's not a village safety issue that the town should deal with.
family that lets the children.
Why not change it to abandoned properties?
Exactly.
Safety.
Pardon?
Just put it to where abandoned properties.
But that's private property.
Applies.
That was my point. When you say
That's
nothing about
right,
private property,
but-
well,
What I'm saying, well, and like I told you at the house the other night, unless you all are going to pay my taxes, you're not going to tell me what I can and cannot do on my own private property. I mean, the abandoned houses, I understand that. My house,
right.
God knows it ain't abandoned.
So have it apply to abandoned houses rather than to everybody.
Especially the ones that's fallen down and just nasty looking, like a fire hazard or I don't like the one.
Or a safety hazard
Well,
for
see,
kids,
abandoned
animals, whatever.
then becomes a issue of definition.
Then perhaps if you don't like it, buy that property for as cheap as you can get it and doze it in. I mean, that's seems to be what we do with those abandoned houses, because when I moved here, there was a lot of abandoned houses. It didn't keep me from moving here, and I never sought out the property owners of those abandoned houses. I pretty much stayed away from them and demanded that they do something with their property. But then my job wasn't to beautify anybody else's private property. It was to just take care of and do the best that I could with my own property. That's my sole responsibility.
Well, I've
Well,
talked,
I realize that by saying that this thing on private property, it's a can of worms, and we've opened up a huge thing with the big
But it's
ordinances.
important.
But I agree. I think that it's important.
So is there a specific page that you're looking at right now that
Well,
says that?
Oh, I'm not really.
Okay.
In general.
Because Marianne brought it
Yeah,
up.
I wrote it down in general, but I thought there was
Yeah,
something.
it's a general.
Somebody's got to go through and find all those in here and decide
Exactly.
whether it is or whether it isn't.
Well, actually, we've done a little bit of this.
Good, okay.
It's, I have
Good
it
job.
on page 47, so
Okay,
that's
good.
kind of where
Well, so
I
I sort of, I wrote it down, but I'm kind of hearing two different things about abandoned. Oh, yeah, it's okay to take care of it, you know, get up to the abandoned property, but it's hard to define abandoned.
Well, yeah, these are controversial issues, that's for darn sure.
I just have one final comment on this, and it addresses the letter that you wrote to us, and it's like you've adopted these ordinances because you believe that they're going to improve the quality of life, and that the safety and the appeal of our community. Number one, you know, I guess that's your deal about the appeal of the community because you want to maybe. I don't know what, you're trying to get a Betterment Award, you want to get your picture on some plaque, I don't know what that is. But I'm only concerned about my life. These ordinances aren't really affecting the quality of my life. I had a good quality of life, that's why I chose to live here. Because I didn't want to live, if I'd wanted to live in a gated community, I'd have sought one out. If I'd wanted to live under agenda rules put forth by the United Nations or whatever, I would have sought out a community like that. I feel that the job of government was created by the people and for the people to protect our constitutional rights, if we even have any in this day and age. And private property, I was created and I have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is all I'm doing. If I do something to step on any of these people's property or maim them or harm them in any way, then I'm responsible for that. But as long as I'm living my life and my animals aren't harassing anyone and I'm not doing anything unlawful, then I don't feel like I need to actually all of a sudden have to have my whole life turned over and my quality of life completely upset. And my safety, I've woken up with nightmares since I've been involved with this, because my safety, my personal constitutional rights are what's at stake here. My safety, and one comment, and I'll leave it with that because you're going to do whatever you do. Every single day, there are men and women climbing hills and dying for absolutely nothing but capitalism. And if you're not aware of that, you haven't really studied what's going on in the world today. I expected to live another 20, 25 years because I've got things to do, grandkids to enjoy, and something more to do with my life. But quietly, I moved here quietly to live a quiet, peaceful life in a little town where the biggest excitement was fireflies in the summer flying up out of the grass. And I was able to overlook people that lived here that were trashy. And when I didn't like the trashy people that lived next to me, I paid exorbitant prices you wouldn't pay for that property today, to keep that property from being more trash. So I had worse neighbors that would actually be, you know, the kind of people that you don't want to live next door to, perhaps. But in that process here, whatever happened there, we've all come here for a reason. We've lived here quietly. And if I have to die for this, it will actually be an exciting thing. Something I can be happy about because I did something meaningful. My little granddaughter interviewed me, "Grandma, did you ever do anything famous?" I racked my brain to see what I'd done. And you know what? One time, I actually took a law clear from the state level. It was at a private level to the state level, which when the state Supreme Court put it down, then we took it clear to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was an interesting thing for me to do. You have to do it. So here's the thing. We're here in our little town. If we can't live here happily together, and this has to be resolved, it will not be resolved by a magistrate telling me that I can't ride my horse down the street, I'm going to have to pay him $500, or something. If my dog hasn't offended anybody, it will be dealt with in the federal courts, and that's the only place you can deal with it. So I'm just saying, I hope that we can actually protect our property rights here and not infringe upon our constitutional rights, because last week you raised your hand to the square and you accepted that responsibility of protecting our constitutional rights, and I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay,
There you go.
good. Going back to the dog thing, if I might, I don't want to discount what you're saying, Marianne, but kind of like section 9 where it's talking about a public nuisance. I think that's a good you know, I think that kind of covers a lot of things. If the dog's being a public nuisance, then, yeah, you could, as a neighbor, go and say, yeah, your dog is a public nuisance, take care of it, you know, keep it on your property, or something, you know. That's my opinion, I like that one.
And that was on page 33.
36 and 37.
Okay,
36,
36,
37.
number 9,
thank you.
section 1. I think that kind of covers a lot of dog situations.
Do you like that one?
Well, because who's gonna counterfeit their tags on their dog? I'm sorry. In number 4, no person shall counterfeit dog tags. I'm sorry.
Really?
What a great idea. Maybe if I paid some veterinarian enough money, I could get some tags.
Section 9, or section 4? Section 4, okay, I was down to section 9, okay.
Wouldn't that be what's political?
So, prolonged barking, chasing any person, vehicle, or bicycle, overturning trash containers, destroying property, fighting, chasing grass animals. Not a collar. No dog. Okay, alright. I got it, thanks.
I think that covers a lot with dogs.
Okay, are you ready to move on to anything else on dog, the dog ordinance?
Well, 13 is pretty bad.
Article number on page 37.
Yeah,
Section 13.
exhibit animal pictures, train your dog.
Well, that has to do with if you're gonna, if we're gonna require rabies shots or not. I mean, that's what has to happen. I don't think anybody's just gonna go around and say, show us this, but, you know, no.
That's what it says.
It
But
says
if
that you
wanna write
will.
it down, page 38.
Section 13.
Yeah, but those are number 2, I guess,
Yeah.
page 37, 37.
And it has, once again, it's a designated officer, so.
Well, you know, what we've done is we have, the board has voted for, and it isn't in these, bylaws yet, or ordinances yet, is that we would have a panel of 3 people. We'd have at least 1 board member and at least 1 person at large, and I put those application forms with everything I sent, and there are more over here, that the board would select 3 people who would, and David. The panel,
Okay.
that they would say, here's a problem I have. And that they, and it's not to get you, it's to try and figure out a way to solve it. Do you
Yes.
need a lawnmower? Do you need somebody to trim your branches? Do you need somebody to mediate whether your dog's barking too loud, you know?
Yeah.
That they would try and do that. So the goal is not to do gotcha, but it's to nurture that community that's been described here, that we can talk to one another's neighbors and all that stuff. And not, you know, and even the places that have been abandoned and haven't been mowed, you know, my position is that if we get that complaint, that we should say, write a letter to those people and say, you know, here are the ordinances, you need to mow them. If you can't get up here to mow them because you live away, here are some people in town who mow for money, you know, here are their phone numbers. You just get it mowed. I don't care how they get it mowed, who mows it. And right now we have a couple of people who are going above and beyond, mowing multiple yards that aren't theirs because the pet properties are vacant, which is part of that community, which is awesome. But it doesn't always get done. So, sorry, that's my little sermon.
Well, I just, on a larger scale too, one of the things that I saw as I was going through and reading the ordinances, what I would like to see is what the town is going to do for people rather than what it's going to do to them. I would really like, so I don't know if that, to me, it just kind of changed the whole tone of the ordinances. Like you, and I appreciated you saying, we don't want it to be a gotcha thing. We want it to be, hey, this is this will help make it a better place, you know, without.
Helping each
Anyway,
other
but I
out.
felt like that's the way they were designed. The ordinances were designed to get you. And so I
That's
like,
understandable.
and that's a huge thing. I feel really bad about saying that because that's a whole revamping of all the ordinances, and I don't want to do that. And I know you guys have spent years doing this. I don't
But if
even know
it's
what
gonna
to say
help.
on, other than to let the ordinances lie, and when we have problems, then deal with the problem of that ordinance at that time. I don't know how anybody feels about that.
Well, that's sort of what the complaint panel does, is when
Yeah.
somebody complains, then
we do something about
then
it.
we look at the
There's not
ordinances.
somebody going around with a tape measure measuring grass and
Well, okay,
you know
if
looking for things to complain about. I mean
that's really
that was
the purpose, if that's really
Yeah.
the
I mean,
object of it.
my personal opinion is when all this started, that's how it was designed. It was designed for issues, not to go around and nitpick. I mean,
Well,
But it
I'm
has,
with you.
it has turned into lots of specific
yeah.
things that are pretty specific. I don't know,
Like-
I've just been thinking about,
Thank you, Mary.
Mary's comment, and Stephen and I have talked about it, and our feeling is if I have the right as an individual, then I can delegate my authority to have you enforce something for me, if it's something that I legally can do myself. Do I have the right to require Mary to vaccinate her dog? If I don't have that right as an individual to require her to do that, there's no way I can give you the right to force her to do that, is what I'm thinking. I feel like we've gotten away, a long ways away, and is it my job to provide safety for everybody? I can do what I can do to keep myself safe, but it's not my job to provide safety for my neighbor or whatever. If there is a danger, if it happens, it's gonna have to be dealt with, it's gonna have to be taken care of, but that's not my job. To
But isn't that
police
what
my
community is
neighbor.
about? Community is about helping one another, protecting each other and ourselves. Isn't that what community is about? Not in a gotcha way,
Community is, but if I don't have the right as an individual, how can I give that right to you to go force my neighbor to do something?
so you're good with open wells around your house. You don't have any right to do anything about that other than report it
If I
to
have
someone.
an open well,
No,
I
but if your
have a
neighbor has one, and
responsibility.
your kids go across there back and forth to school every day, you know, there's a state government that will take care of that, you know. and-
Okay, so there are county and state laws that also come into play with some of these issues, but I'm just thinking in terms of
what you can
some of
delegate.
these other issues that are being discussed tonight too, that I think needs to be applied in the direction of protecting private property and people's constitutional rights.
So residents, you're, just make sure I'm getting what you're saying, is that residents can only, your position is residents can only delegate what they themselves could do.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for.
Otherwise, if it's illegal throughout the state or county or whatever, then, you know, we have county laws, we have state laws that deal with those. Plus, as a community, obviously, if there's an open well, that is gonna be a danger. But I think that's different than me saying she's got to vaccinate her dog.
Well,
Till her dog bites your dog, you know, and then it gets rabies.
Then I have to deal with
Yeah.
that, and she has to deal with that. That's our deal. It's not
Yours.
community dealing with.
I don't see
I don't
any
know if
different
that
than
makes
the
I'm
sense.
sorry, I
Yeah.
captured it, I think what you said, thank you, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, an open well, yeah, okay.
I didn't even
Since there
see
isn't
no.
one,
That
that's
is
a
a
moot
safety,
point.
Well,
that
do we know
that
that?
is in the later sections back
But
here
if we
where
try to
that's,
write laws for ifs,
for every, if there is, we're gonna be regulated clear for here.
yeah.
And I agree with her. It is not the board's job to regulate our safety. It's not your job. You're not the military, you're not the police force, you're the board of trustees. And you're here to protect our constitutional rights, because that's all I heard you swear an oath to.
I
It
didn't
was-
swear to your safety.
Well, you could protect my constitutional right, but not to beautify my yard or, no, I take care of my own safety.
Okay, do we have any more on the dog ordinance?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch we could eliminate, I'm sorry, yeah. Which, I don't know if you wanna go through all those tonight or not.
I'd like to circle them at least, I'm interested in that, Lorianne, I appreciate your effort, and, where's my pen?
What page are you on?
Well, we're from 38 to 39,
Okay,
in lieu of impoundment,
so that's section,
18,
thank you, okay.
17, 18,
17 is impoundment, and 18 is in lieu of impoundment.
duty to comply, 16, That's on designated officer.
So there's nothing about from 17 and, I'm sorry, from 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22, I mean, is that what you're saying we need
Scratch.
to review?
Or eliminate.
Well, we need to, our board's gonna review it at our next meeting, all these things we've
But
talked
is
about
that what
tonight.
she's asking,
Yeah.
suggesting?
I mean, we can just, make a note that we need to look at like the wording and the context of
Okay.
the whole thing.
I
Does
got
that
it.
sound legitimate to everybody?
Yeah.
I just feel like I've committed to write something up, and I
Yeah,
wanna write
exactly,
everything up, and I want it to be
exactly, yes, and
accurate and
I
not my
appreciate, yeah.
interpretation of stuff, so. I'm sorry that
We'll
it takes
just,
so long.
just kind of
No,
make a
it's
note that
okay.
we'll look at
We're glad you did clarification.
Yeah,
it.
I hope it was, but consider it.
Consider the,
Eliminating what we could.
Like section 21. Like I don't understand that. Does that mean you come on my property and try to take my dog and it's unlawful for me to stop you? Is that what that's saying?
Well, see, there's so many of these laws that are covered under the county
Mm-hmm.
that why it's redundant. And it puts the board in a position of being the policeman, and that's not our, I don't wanna be the policeman.
And so you're thinking the dog thing is covered by the county? Is that what you would, I just wrote down they're redundant with county, but then I didn't have an example of that, so if we come across some,
Well,
and I'll write
okay,
it by there.
interfering with an officer, 21.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the county sheriff comes and says your dog's annoying and dangerous because so-and-so complained, then we don't need to deal with interfering with an officer, because that's covered under county.
Some
This
people
is-
like government more local.
This is
rather
talking
than
about a designated
further away.
officer, which I thought was your board officer.
Okay, well, I don't know, I'm sorry, Mary Claire.
I thought this said, it says a designated officer of the village. It didn't say anything about the sheriff. So it's saying it shall be unlawful for any person to take or attempt to take from a designated officer of the village any dog taken up by him in compliance with this ordinance, or to interfere with him or hinder him in the performance of his duty. So you're saying that there's going to be a designated officer of the village.
This complaint panel will take complaints and they'll
That's
try and
the
get it
Yeah, we-
resolved.
yeah, we have to give that,
And that's.
And they're the ones that are going to come onto my property and take my
They're going
dog?
to talk with you about whatever the issue is and to try and come to some kind of resolution.
Well, it doesn't say that in 21.
Well, that's
No,
why
that's what
21
we're
needs to be.
doing now.
21 needs to be scratched. I agree. And the word unlawful, I mean, it isn't lawful anyway. What you're doing is not lawful.
okay.
Okay, so what we're saying for you, Mary, is we're going to re-examine several pages of the dog stuff.
Thank
And
you.
animals.
Okay, moving on. Factory built homes. Any discussion on factory built homes?
Which is on page.
Page
41.
There we are, I thought 41, okay.
Okay.
Is it, if people have bought their property and own
Yeah,
their
this is a
property, is it
property
really?
I can't even
We ran here today.
Well, no, I'm saying, is it our right to tell them what to do with that property, what they can put on their property?
That's
That's a
one
question
of
I
the
have.
personal
I
property
think,
issues.
mhm.
And truthfully, I think this ordinance was created with the, safety issues. I think that was the whole,
It isn't tied down and it blows away, but I guess they're saying that's their individual right, they could blow away if they